Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But we begin the week on a Monday, the 29th of July 2024 with the following lineup. We'll begin with the developments as far as the US elections are concerned, whether it be the different tit for tat comments that we are seeing between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, whether it be the different polls that predict both of them tied for the moment, but some of the polls are saying that Trump has a slight lead over Kamala Harris, whether it be how both are working towards garnering more and more voter turnout, or let's put it that way, more and more public opinion catered towards them. Days are getting numbered, 99 days left to the US elections, but the tensions are very much apparent on the US political arena. This is going to be our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the day 297 of the Israel-Palestine conflict. A lot has been going on as far as that conflict is concerned. Palestinians continue to flee different areas, whether it be the Burej or Nuseirat refugee camps, and of course UNRWA saying that 86% of the Gaza strip is currently under such orders to have them evacuate. Also, at least 39,900 and rather 324 people have been killed so far, and 90,830 have been injured so far since the 7th of October when all of this began. Israeli Prime Minister has met with Kamala Harris, he has met with Joe Biden, and there is a lot of pressure on him to move towards a ceasefire. Will the Israeli side finally relent to some kind of ceasefire with the Palestinian side is the big question on everybody's mind. Then there is a statement by the Quad that also talks about both the factions ending the current stalemate and moving towards talks, and also talk about a two-state solution. This and more is going to be part of our second segment. Then we are going to talk about the government that has introduced visa reforms to facilitate foreign investors. Our Prime Minister said the government has approved this visa-free entry for businessmen from the Gulf countries. He also says online visas are going to be issued within 24 hours to businessmen, investors and tourists of 126 countries. Then the International Tiger Day is being observed today to raise global awareness about tiger conservation and the threats faced by these endangered animals. Finally, from one masked person to another masked villain this time, Robert Downey Jr. from his iconic Iron Man character now goes to be the villain in the future Marvel movies as Doctor Doom. This is going to be the lineup for today. Let's begin with our first story, and that concerns the development as far as the US elections are concerned. A lot has happened between the Republicans and the Democrats. A lot has happened between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump as well. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. In the studios, we've been joined by Commodore retired Khalid Banuri. You are an IR expert and visiting faculty at the Qazi University. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Then we've been joined by Professor Scott Lucas. He's a professor of international politics at the Clinton Institute at the University College of Dublin. Professor Scott Lucas, thank you very much to have joined us as well. We'll begin with, of course, our guests in the studios. Khalid Banuri Saab, the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump tells Christians on Friday that if they vote for him in the upcoming US elections in 4 years, you won't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good, you're not going to have to vote, quote unquote. Kamala Harris campaign spokesperson in a statement did not directly address these remarks, but he did describe Trump's overall speech as bizarre and backward looking. What did Donald Trump mean by these remarks? Because even I am kind of stumped by it as to what his exact meaning behind this was.
We know that Donald Trump has always been an extrovert. He's very fond of frontal attacks, something like the chickens game, in which the example that I love to tell is when you have two racing cars really hurtling down at each other head to head, and you see one of them, that will be Donald Trump, throughout the steering wheel. I got no control, I'm going to hit you, are you going to blink or not? That's the kind of approach he's always had, and hoping that the other side will blink. But hope, as we know, is not a strategy. So Donald Trump is not a person who will only rely on hope. So that aside, this statement that came as a reaction from the Harris campaign, I don't think this statement is really bizarre. I think it's really the frontal attack strategy. He's making both the Republicans and the Democrats wonder what's really up his sleeve, the real strategy. It could mean I will be so good the next elections will be a given. It could, I could fix the American elections system of voting. That will be a dangerous thing, and depending on how he intends to fix that system. But at the moment, he's just saying, I'm throwing out the steering wheel, you come at me, I'm going to win at all costs. So,
all right. So there is a certain confidence there.
Yes, and but what can he actually do? Can be a different story. It could have various concerns. As we go along, we can talk more about that.
All right. In an interview with Fox News in December, Trump says if he won the November 5 election, he would be a dictator, but only on day one, to close the southern border with Mexico. He's talked about that in the past as well, and expand oil drilling. Democrats, of course, seized on that moment. Trump has since said that these remarks were a joke. Were they a joke? What's your take?
Yeah, allow me a little diversion. Several years ago, and this is a few weeks after 9/11, I happened to attend a seminar at one of the leading think tanks in Washington, D.C. And someone, a white Caucasian gentleman, I won't know his name, gave an example. He said, you know, I was watching on Fox News the other day, and another person, someone sitting on the panel interrupted him and said, if you still watch Fox News, shame on you. But here's what the facts are. Fox News makes stories, and Donald Trump is very, very fond of this. He knew Democrats will pick on him, but he has a history of saying reckless things. Terming this as a joke is probably a damage control if it was on the spur of the moment that he said. But I would take this as signaling the commitment that, you know, the first time when he stood for elections, he said, I will build the wall for Mexico. And that's the, you know, the reminder that if I make a promise, I will carry this through. So that's how I think it is. Even if this particular statement wasn't deliberate, he's actually showing that commitment.
All right, okay. So he's moving towards his commitment to building the wall with Mexico. Professor Scott Lucas, thank you very much to have joined us. Scott Lucas, Trump, if he wins a second term in the White House, he can serve only 4 more years as president, as US presidents are limited to 2 terms. We've seen that previously as well, consecutive or not, under the US Constitution. But Trump, in May, when he speaks to a National Rifle Association gathering, says that he could serve more than 2 terms as president. He refers to the presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Do you feel a 3rd term is possible in this day and age for any president, including Trump?
Under the U.S. system, it's not. But we're talking about a man who is willing to tear down the U.S. system for his personal gain. I think, you know, it's sometimes hard because Trump lies so often, Trump exaggerates so often, to say, okay, what's he serious about? So the easiest way for me to do this is just to go over the track record. In 2016, Donald Trump said the election was rigged, even though he won the presidency because he lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. Of course, in 2020, we know that he tried to overturn the election result to the point where he tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power to Joe Biden by calling on his marchers to stop the confirmation, which they did by attacking the Capitol. We know that Trump has said not only that he would act as a dictator on day one, whether that's just simply to take draconian measures with immigration or, you know, to open up oil drilling or for other actions. And we know that he has said that he will exact retribution upon his enemies. So when Donald Trump says, in effect, I will have as many terms in office as I want, because he has also said that he wants to emulate President for life Xi Jinping in China, or he wants to emulate Vladimir Putin in Russia. When Donald Trump says to his followers, as your analyst pointed out, either we will have such a landslide victory, you won't need to vote again, or what is more likely, if I get back into the White House, I'll make it impossible for me to lose again. He has to be taken seriously. You know, Donald Trump is a wannabe autocrat. Whether the U.S. system can be broken so he becomes a wannabe autocrat, if he is elected in November, is probably the most critical question in peacetime for the United States since 1865.
All right. Scott Lucas, also let's move towards Kamala Harris or Kamala Harris's election campaign. That campaign on Sunday said it has raised $200 million and signed up 170,000 new volunteers in the week since she became the Democratic Party's presidential candidate. As of course, as we very well know, Republicans continue to hammer Harris over her work as a vice president. She has also secured support from a majority of delegates to the Democratic National Convention that is going to happen next month, of course, likely ensuring she will become the party's nominee for the president. This is now Democratic National Committee Chair Jamie Harrison tells MSNBC on Sunday, that is yesterday, that our vice president is the presumptive nominee. We will have the official vote on the 1st of August. Does this further clarify, in your point of view, Kamala Harris's position as a new presidential nominee, or are there some other candidates that could also surface by then?
No, Kamala Harris will be the Democratic nominee. If I was talking to you 8 days ago, only 8 days ago, think what a different situation it was with Joe Biden and the media's obsession with his age and mental state, in effect handing the keys to Donald Trump in the White House. And think how much has changed since then, because as soon as Biden stepped aside on that Sunday evening, 8 days ago, the Harris campaign rolled out what they had been planning for some time, even before Biden made his announcement. So she got not only the endorsement of Biden, but of almost all the leading figures in the Democratic Party, all the way up to the Obamas a few days ago. She then was able to get a majority of the delegates so that she was the presumptive nominee. She raised $120 million in 36 hours. But most importantly, she took the news cycle away from Donald Trump. She did it by two things. One is by highlighting issues and bringing issues back to the center of the campaign, such as women's rights, such as climate change, such as healthcare, education, the economy, foreign policy. And she did it by juxtaposing herself as the prosecutor versus Donald Trump as the convicted felon.
I'll come back. I'll come to you in a bit, but I have to go to my guest who is in the studios. Khalid Banuri Saab, Trump's campaign says that it has raised $331 million in the second quarter, topping the $264 million that Biden's campaign and its Democratic allies had raised in the same period. Also, it continues to raise certain sentiment, and there's a certain fraction of or part of the US public that is also quite hyped up about Trump this time. Polls also show over the past week, including one by Reuters and Ipsos, that Harris and Trump are more or less tied, setting the stage for a close-fought campaign over the 100 days, 99 days now left since the election. What impact do polls have ever on eventual A, voter turnout, B, election results, and do you feel all the money that is being garnered by the different campaigns, whether it be the Trump or the Kamala Harris campaign, how important is this? How important are the numbers, the figures that are being shown?
I think there are 2 or 3 things that one has to look into before I go to the impact of the polls. The suddenness of how Harris became the nominee brought in a certain euphoria amongst the Democrats, and there's this urgency to build her campaign, and hence probably the reason for sudden money coming in, and also the support that we tend to see. But polls are indicative of a section of those excited people, the close watchers of the elections, who would actually be participating in the polls. If you look at some of the recent figures, the Forbes poll or the New York Times, you'll see the sample is actually pretty small. 1,000 votes in one case. But
samples and polls are always very small,
yeah,
aren't they?
They are, but are they indicative of, there are 2 angles to connect. One is the impact of the social media. I know the polls will create an emotional impact, and hence a beeline from my campaign office to ensure that as many people who can vote will vote. So sometimes this can be erroneous. The other angle is that they are still neck to neck. In my view, Trump and Biden was leaning towards Biden till the time he existed, but now this seems to be reversing in this sense that Trump has gained a little bit of prominence as
and
opposed
sympathy
to
maybe.
And sympathy, a lot of sympathy. Harris is trying to overcome that and trying to build as an alternative. So the polls are actually an emotional indicator rather than any practical sense of what the actual elections will be. Okay. So that's the sense that I have out of this. The rest will depend, there's still 99 days, the rest will depend on the kind of statements that will come in, how much of which class of Americans will lean towards what they hear on the television or on the social media.
But there are also the die-hard campaigners, the die-hard fans, let's put it that way, who will continue to support Trump come what may, or will continue to support the Democrats come what may.
Absolutely, that always remains. But the dangling vote is what will perhaps make the difference.
All right, the dangling vote. Let's talk about the different statements that have emanated. Scott Lucas, Republican attacks on Harris, who's the first woman and the first Black and South Asian person to serve as U.S. Vice President, have intensified in the days. And we've seen that not only from Trump, but from others as well. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, for example, has told Fox News that Harris was incredibly vapid and predicted Democrats would issue a blizzard of lies to distance Harris from the Biden campaign's policies on immigration as well as other issues. They have to whitewash Harris's background to be able to make her palpable to the American people. Do you feel comments such as these are A, racist, and B, borderline, offensive?
Well, look, let's first call out what is there, and that is that some of the rhetoric from the Trump campaign against Kamala Harris, including from Trump himself, is misogynist. It's very demeaning to women. In my opinion, and also there is an element of race there, maybe latent, but there's an element of race there in terms of, this is a Black woman. And you see that a lot more in social media come out into the open, where you will see not only Kamala Harris, but Michelle Obama being mocked. I think the Trump campaign made two serious mistakes in the immediate before and after of the Harris candidacy, which has added to this election being reset. As your guest said, it's now, a toss-up race. The first is the pick of J.D. Vance, primarily because Donald Trump liked the way that Senator Vance appeared on TV as his vice presidential running mate, was incredibly short-sighted. It did not balance the ticket with respect to gender. It did not balance the ticket with respect to race. It did not balance the ticket with respect to geography, because the Republicans are ahead in Ohio. It just gave the ticket to white guys, and Vance just simply being Trump 2.0, issuing the same lines as Trump, just a little bit louder. Secondly, Trump's initial attacks that I referred to on Harris, I think were very ill-judged. He tried initially to attack her as laughing Kamala by making fun of her laugh. She has quite a boisterous laugh. She enjoys herself. He then said, well, she's nuts, she's crazy. What he immediately did is those dangling voters that your guest talked about, especially women voters who are undecided, immediately heard a man who was demeaning women using techniques they hear too often. The way a woman looks, the way a woman sounds. Trump, in other words, tried the same tactic he used against Hillary Clinton in 2016 by insulting her, and I think he made a misjudgment. First of all, Kamala Harris is not Hillary Clinton. And secondly, given how important women's rights will be in this campaign, including reproductive rights, I think Trump, and indeed the attacks by others, including Senator Vance and others, upon Kamala Harris as a person, are not probably the best way to go ahead. I think the best ground for the Republicans to proceed is probably with the attacks, albeit based on misinformation, about immigration, whipping up the culture of fear, and secondly, falsely saying that the economy is not doing well, when in fact it is. Those arguments might stick, but I wonder if they'll stick probably with Trump's base, which doesn't really help them that much, when they need to actually make those arguments stick with the independent, the swing voters, as your guest called them, the dangling voters.
So let's see what happens, because the days are now numbered. 99 days are left as far as these elections are concerned. Thank you very much to have joined us, Professor Scott Lucas, and of course to have highlighted different aspects of this US presidential race to us, to the audience, that could better understand now how things are moving along. Thank you very much, Professor Scott Lucas. Coming to you, Commodore Khalid Banuri Saab, I'd like to merge 2 or 3 questions together. Some of the Trump allies, including some members of the Black Americans for Trump coalition, warned that disparaging Trump, like we've heard, and of course Professor Scott Lucas also alluded to, could hurt Trump in his outreach to black voters, which are a crucial demographic in the upcoming elections. Then I'd like to also understand how Trump paints Harris as evil, sick, unhinged, and of course saying that she's going to destroy the country, criticizing her on issues ranging from public safety to immigration, that Scott Lucas also alluded to, while Kamala Harris casts herself as the underdog in the presidential race and calls her Republican opponent just plain weird. I would like to end this whole barrage of questions by saying giving a quote by Trump, saying that if a crazy liberal like Kamala Harris gets in, the American dream is dead, saying that Kamala Harris is even worse than Biden. Has US politics been that aggressive or unhinged in your point of view?
A short answer would be never,
Okay.
not to that extent. But look at the whole world. The politics around the whole world is unhinged today. This is an age of anger and intolerance. You go around in Europe and you find that, very hardline positions are being taken, and they are becoming more popular with time. Although some of them haven't won elections, but the leaning is towards this. And add to this the impact of the invisible social media. You don't know who I am kind of an approach, so I could say and get away with whatever. And that approach has actually brought in controversy that actually says that there's no more balance or even courtesies. People can easily afford to be abusive, and all this is actually playing into whatever we do around the other things in the world. So politics is directly getting affected. We know that the American presidential debates have had situations in which both candidates have stood on the same stage and talked about policies, attacked policies, but calling names was, even if it was done, it was subdued. Now there are no limits. But here's a method to that madness.
Okay.
The method is that you still are tapping the kind of voter that you still think is undecided. When Harris says Trump is weird, because she said that too, that's the jargon that coming into the voting age kind of people use. The generation Y and Z, that's what they are looking on, and they can relate with that. It also taps the voters which are non-white. What Trump has clearly on his side is typically the non-college educated white vote, which is surely on his side. The rest he is tapping through his own popularity, but also this campaign of trying to dissuade the other voter on the notion of American dream has always existed, and that's what you're going to lose, those ideas. What is relevant to note is how now the technology is being used to build perceptions or the misperceptions. The misinformation is something that has always come into such things, providing, but deliberate disinformation is being played. Deepfake, for example.
Speaking of that, a manipulated video has mimicked the voice of kamalaharris. And saying things she did not say is raising a lot of concerns amongst the US political circles. And this video also gained attention after Elon Musk, who of course owns Twitter or X for the moment, shared it on his social media platform without explicitly noting that it was originally released as a parody. Do you feel concerns are there on how, as you yourself said, how deep fakes AI could affect the whole political campaign from the Democratic side as well as the Republican side and create perceptions or misperceptions?
Yes, I think there's a huge possibility, and some of the basics of these things are coming back. Recall Goebbels, the master and the Reich minister of propaganda, who said, speak the untruths so much repeatedly, so it becomes the truth by itself. Now, if you happen to see every day, morning and evening and night, a similar kind of analogy, one way or the other, some through social media, some through an anecdote, and some through, calling it a parody, like the one on Twitter, on Harris, it will start to bring several, not all, but several to this idea where there's smoke, there's got to be something there. So it does start to build some perceptions of whether this is really the truth, or at least make people wonder if what they always believed was that really the truth or not. That will go on. And one last thing to say is, although there can be several examples, the first time I learnt of the clear use of deepfake was when Trump was still president, and there was a video of Trump praising a Chinese company's commodities, which were, and there was a lip sync. It was Trump's style. It was the voice, the decibels were his own. It looked like him, of course. There was a video of him praising that Chinese company. It was deep fake, but it was done very, very nicely. And when you see that, you start to wonder that seeing is believing is no more a possible idiom anymore.
I think people need to be very cognizant of that very fact, and you'd be very careful when they watch any video, at least online. And there are so many addresses that both these candidates are making, so I think one should rely more on that and what they are saying rather than what is present on social media. Our second, we'll now revert to us, not revert, but move towards our second story, and that is the Israel-Palestine conflict that has entered its 297th day. Whether it be the whole situation where Palestinians are forced to flee from one place to the other, whether it's Rafah or it's Gaza or it's other places, they are being moved to and fro from one place or the other. They are being butchered, they are being massacred, they are being injured, they don't have enough food, they don't have enough water, they have the whole main water supply tank has also been attacked by the Israeli army, and the list goes on. Despite the ICJ ruling, despite an ICC ruling, despite the United Nations Security Council also taking out a resolution on that, nothing concrete has happened. So why is that, and where are we moving towards? We've been joined by, of course, we have Air Commodore Khalid Banuri sahab, who continues to stay with us, but also Osama Muhammad Nazal, who is a Palestinian journalist, joins us from there to give us an outlay on what is exactly happening. We'll begin with you, Osama. Thank you very much to have joined us. Osama, the Israeli Air Force says it has targeted 35 targets in the past 24 hours, killing many people in Rafah and in Khan Yunus. We all know the casualties, 39,363 since the 7th of October, 90,900 plus have been injured since this whole war began. Then the children that are being massacred, the women that are being killed, the way this whole genocide or ethnic cleansing or war against humanity is going on is despicable, to say the least. What are you foreseeing? Till when is this going to continue?
Yeah, as you said, dear, it is despicable, really. And it sounds that Israel is not going to stop. It's genocidal campaign against the Palestinians, and it's not going to run its murdering and killing machines against the Palestinian children and women in Gaza. And this can be understood from the speech of the Zionist regime Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the American Congress. He talked about the Israeli need for more weapons and more arms. He talked about the Israeli need for regional alliances in order to start a large-scale war, but he did not talk anything about a truce or about a ceasefire or about an end to his genocidal campaign against the Palestinians. Every day and every minute, Palestinians are being butchered in Gaza by the Israeli bombs and the Israeli rockets. And as you mentioned, the big numbers of the Palestinian victims. But it is not an issue of numbers only. It is an issue of ethnic cleansing. What Israel is doing now is ethnically cleansing the Palestinians from Gaza, as it took out about 1 million Palestinians from the northern part of Gaza to the southern part, and after that it ordered them to gather alongside the coastline, Al-Mawasi area in Khan Yunis, where there are more than 1 million displaced Palestinians just in that very small area, which is 30 kilometers only. You're talking about 1 million people living in 30 kilometers only. So this is the plan, that they want to empty Gaza of its people, either by killing them or by forcing them in the end out of their homeland.
All right. Osama, I would also like to understand the Palestinian Ministry of Education says 10,000 students and 400 teachers have been killed in the Gaza Strip as a result of this aggression since 7th of October. There's also a report by the Lancet Journal that says in fact the exact amount is more than 185,000 because of all those who have been displaced, because of all those who are still buried under the rubble, and of course there are so many people unaccounted for. More than 76% of schools in Gaza require full reconstruction or major rehabilitation as far as the UN is concerned. UNRWA says that almost 8 of its schools have been completely destroyed. What does Israel want? What is the eventual game that Israel is playing as far as this war against humanity is concerned?
And you mentioned the education system in Gaza, and today the students in the occupied Palestinian territory got the results of their matriculation exam, which we call a tawjihi examination in Palestine, that prepares the students for the university studies and to start preparing for their future. 39,000 Palestinian students of Gaza were deprived of the matriculation exam of at-tawjihi, and so they have no possibility for joining any university or for continuing their education. So Israel is not only destroying the education system in Gaza, but at the same time destroying the future of the current Palestinian generation, the generation that is expected to build the Palestinian life and to lead the Palestinian society. So Israel, as I said before, has a genocide plan to end the existence of the Palestinians in Gaza. And how could this be achieved? By leaving no future and no possibility for human life in the Gaza Strip. It destroyed the health sector completely. About 32 hospitals out of 35 hospitals were either fully or partially demolished and got out of service. At the same time, it destroyed almost all the schools of Gaza, and the Palestinian students have not attended even one class since the 7th of October until now. Why Israel is doing that? In order to carry out and implement its scheme. No Palestinian in Gaza. That is the strategy that Israel has, and it is destroying all the features and all the aspects of life there in order to make its dream true, the Zionist dream. having no Palestinian between the river and the sea, as Netanyahu said in the American Congress, that this is all the land of Israel. And you heard of the Israeli parliament or Knesset law that no Palestinian state could be established between the river and the sea. And this is all the land of Israel. This is what Israel is about today.
All right. Osama, please stay online with us. We'll revert to Khalid Banuri Saab. Human Rights Watch accuses Israeli forces of publishing degrading photographs and videos of detained Palestinians, including children, in acts that amount to war crimes. Those prisoners who have been released also talk of horrendous stories, have told horrendous stories of what has happened to them in the prisons as well. Is that surprising to you?
Looking at this, such a somber situation, which is an understatement by itself, it's not surprising because there's a history that you've seen. There is international law. It has very clear positions about what are war crimes. War crimes, there's a difference between war crimes and crimes against humanity. The only major significant difference is that war crimes are during an armed conflict, while crimes against humanity can be during peacetime as well. So, if you look at the notion of crimes against humanity, every part of the definition is happening there. Let me read this to you. Crimes against humanity consist of the various acts: murder, extermination, enslavement, torture, forcible transfers of populations, imprisonment, rape, persecution, and forced disappearances, and apartheid, among others, when these are committed as a part of a widespread or a systematic attack which is directed. Every classic definition of book is applicable onto it. There is a genocide convention that exists. And you know how many times the genocide was declared by the United Nations? 3 times.
Okay.
Cambodia, and thereafter Rwanda and Bosnia. This is a situation where it's a responsibility of every nation in the world to get involved. There is this notion called R2P, the responsibility to protect. It is considered part of the customary international law. It's not a treaty law by itself, so one can argue this way and that way against it. But here is a blatant violation of international law which is consistently happening. So these, the example that you picked from the Human Rights Watch is one of the several. There's a convention on rights of the child, there's a convention on discrimination against women. All these laws are there which clearly identify that illegalities are continuously happening.
All right.
So it's a collective responsibility of the whole international community.
All right. It is a collective responsibility. Nevertheless, Osama, coming to you, there has been a quad meeting of the 4 important nations in the Japanese capital, Kyoto, where they talk about the 2-state solution, where they talk about ending the current situation in Palestine. Then we've got the Turkish president who says his country could intervene in Israel's war on Gaza. How do you view these statements? Do you feel there's any weightage or importance to them?
Holding such conferences and meetings and talking about the 2-state solution is nonsense from the eyes and perspective of the Palestinians who are watching and living what's really happening on the ground. I was on my way from the north of the occupied West Bank to the center, from Jenin, where I live, to Ramallah, where I work. And all that I see Israeli settlements and Israeli infrastructure being built at every inch of the Palestinian land for the Jewish colonizers, the Jewish settlers, and the Jewish settlements that are being expanded around the clock in the occupied West Bank. So while the world is talking about the 2-state solution, it allows Israel to steal and grab more Palestinian land for building settlements at the expense of the Palestinians. Apart from that, the city of Jerusalem, and according to the United Nations resolutions, the eastern part of the city was slated to be a capital of the Palestinian state. Today, if you come to Jerusalem, you will see how Israel ended the Palestinian, Arab, Islamic, and the Christian features of the city of Jerusalem being completely Judaized. All that you see, the Jewish settlements and the Jewish colonies and the Israeli military vehicles and the checkpoints in order to wipe off the Palestinian national identity in the city. So I think that this word today and these meetings are just waste of time, full of a bluff and deceit, and taking no serious action to press Israel to come to terms and accept the two-state solution. I think it is dead now.
Osama, we have to cut you short. We're a bit short of time as far as our show is concerned. Thank you very much to have joined us, to have given us your eminent point of view. I think it's very important that we get to know from somebody who's there as to what actually is happening in different areas of Palestine. Thank you very much, Osama Muhammad Nazal, to have joined us all the way from Palestine. And thank you very much, Khalid Banuri Sahab, to have also stayed with us during the entirety of the show. We'll end with the last three stories very, very quickly. The first is the government of Pakistan introducing visa reforms to facilitate foreign investors, whether it be visa-free entry for businessmen from the Gulf countries to promote the foreign investment as alluded to by our Prime Minister, or the online visas to be issued within 24 hours to the businessmen, investors and tourists of 126 countries, or a subcategory to visa on arrival facility approved for Sikh yatris. There are a lot of facilities that are now being given as far as the foreigners are concerned. He also has, our Prime Minister has also said, e-system of electronic gates is being enforced at Islamabad, Lahore and the Karachi airports. So, of course, things in the right direction. Let's see how the world reacts to that. International Tiger Day is being observed today. It is being observed today to raise global awareness about tiger conservation and the threats faced by these endangered animals. The day is aiming to raise awareness about the urgent threats that they face, such as habitat issues, poaching and human-wildlife conflict. Finally, Robert Downey Jr. is a name that we've all loved over the past few decades. He's appeared as various roles, but under the Marvel universe, we've seen him emerge as the Iron Man. That ended with the Avengers Endgame, but what has we've seen very, very recently is Robert Downey Jr. re-emerging as one of the main villains in the future of Marvel universe as Doctor Doom. Now, Doctor Doom is one of the major villains. If you've read the comics, you'll be I mean, there's a lot of interest as far as that character is concerned, and the fact that Robert Downey Jr. has returned has excited a lot of fan base as far as the Marvel universe is concerned. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of the day's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to you, us in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.